Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. The one and only Virginia Attorney General debate was last night, where Democrat Jay Jones was confronted about his texts fantasizing about killing Republicans and their children, in which he doubled and then tripled down on that sentiment in his exchange with a Republican lawmaker in Virginia. That, however, was not last night's only debate. Last night in New York City, the mayoral candidates squared off, where Muslim socialist Zohran Mamdani criticized Andrew Cuomo for not visiting a mosque. What in the actual F? Since when do American politicians have to go visit a mosque in order to be considered viable candidates for office? In New York, by the way, 24 years after 9/11, it's at that. You have to go visit a mosque to be no, you don't. And Andrew Cuomo, grow a pair. Why don't you look over at him and say, I don't have to go visit a mosque, all right? I live in America. It's a Christian nation. I'm fine with Muslims, but I certainly don't need to go and listen to Allahu Akbar while people are on their knees 5 times a day in order to run this city. Zohran. It's like everybody was ridiculous last night. Curtis Lewa was the only one who you could possibly see doing this job. He was totally likable, but of course he has no chance because it's New York, and while they used to sometimes elect more moderate Republicans like Giuliani, and Bloomberg was at first, then went independent. Now they wouldn't. Now they just won't. They are intent on self-destruction. So this guy Zohran Mamdani is going to win. And then I guess we're all going to have to visit mosques if he has his vision. Plus, President Trump critic John Bolton is now facing decades in prison for allegedly mishandling classified information. He denies he did it. Well, no, he actually technically doesn't deny it. I mean, if you listen to our AM update this morning, which you should, we laid out his denial, and it is a classic example in deception, in my opinion. And you know that I've taken the Phil Houston class repeatedly. He's the human lie detector, CIA deception detection architect, 25 years there, unearthing double agents and cross-examining bad guys and terrorists, Gitmo and beyond. And Phil Houston, I mean, I can't wait to show this statement to him of John Bolton's denial, quote unquote denial. There's no denial in it. He does not deny that he printed out, kept, and transmitted classified information, which is what he's accused of. He says his behavior was lawful. He gets into talking about his character. Hello, that is a red flag. We've talked about this. If you say to me, Megyn, did you rob the bank this morning? I don't say, I'm a good person. My parents would never raise a bank robber. It would be wrong to rob a bank. I say, no, I didn't rob the bank. Period. Listen for this one simple thing, because it's such an easy method of, detecting potentially deception. The true Phil Houston way is there have to be at least 2 of these signs of deception within the first 5 seconds of the question being asked. That's generally how it goes. But you can apply it to a written statement, so the timing thing is flexible. And you would look for multiple signs of deception, which there were in his statement. The other thing he does is he goes on the attack against Trump. That's another sign of a liar. This is my opinion. He may be telling the truth. I don't think so. But again, back to my bank example, I wouldn't then say, and you're a bad person for raising this. You're constantly accusing others. And you used to beat people up when we knew each other back in middle school. So you're nasty. You're in no position to cast aspersions at me. I wouldn't say that. I'd say I didn't rob a bank. No, I didn't do it. I might say, go look at my phone records. It'll show you exactly where I was. Something like that resorts to proof, something that would uphold truth. That's what a truth teller does. They run to the thing that will unearth what is real. They don't go into character defenses and go on offense attacking this person. It's just not how a truth teller sounds. And that the Bolton statement is a classic example in all of it. And it doesn't even have a denial of the actual charges. He says he behaved lawfully, seems to be a characterization of his conduct, not a denial that he engaged in it. So, all right, we'll get back to that. Also, J-Lo's back in the news, complaining about never truly being loved. Not by one of her, I think, 5 or 6 husbands, maybe 4, and the other 2 are fiancés. We'll get into it, but very interesting soundbite. And my favorite soundbite of the day, and it's perfect for our guest today, Michelle Obama. Wait until I show you the Michelle Obama, the pair of sound bites that we have queued up for her. There's no one better to discuss all of this. And I mean that. Nobody uses my next guest in the right way, in my view, because he's an expert on so much. They stay always with the hard news, but he always has something interesting to say when you talk to him about things happening in our culture, from J-Lo to Meghan Markle and beyond. I speak, of course, of Victor Davis Hanson. He is a senior fellow at Stanford's Hoover Institution and host of Victor Davis Hanson in His Own Words, which is a new show on the Daily Signal. He will also be joining me on the Megyn Kelly live tour in Bakersfield, California. That's November 20th. Go and get your tickets now at megynkelly.com. They're selling out at several dates already, okay? So don't miss VDH and yours truly in Bakersfield. You can buy tickets for all 10 stops, or those that are still available, at megynkelly.com. Texas, coming to you first. We start there in just a few days, starting next weekend. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. When you are buried in credit card and loan debt, it's human nature to put it off and say, I'll deal with it later. If that is you, here's something you need to know. Done with Debt discovered a little-known strategy that works in your favor to dramatically reduce or even erase your debt altogether. They can aggressively engage everyone you owe money to this fall. And here's why. They know which lenders and credit card companies are doing year-end accounting and which need to cut deals. They even know which ones have year-end audits and need to get your debt off of their books ASAP. So consider getting started with Done with Debt now, this fall. Done with Debt accomplishes this without bankruptcy or new loans. In fact, most clients end up with more money in their pocket the first month. Get started now while you still have time. Go to donewithdebt.com. Speak with one of their specialists for free. Visit donewithdebt.com. VDH, great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Megyn.
Yeah, congrats on the new show. So is it, because you already have a podcast,
we moved.
So is this a new one?
Yeah, we did. We just moved from the Just the News platform to the Daily Signal. But as you know, when you move, there's all these keys and everything and the name. And so it was kind of complicated, but we're now, after a 2-week hiatus, we're back.
Well, we will find you wherever you are. That is worth the trip and the new follow button. There's so much goodness for us today, Victor. I'm so excited to have you here. Might as well kick it off with the mayoral race, because that debate was actually very interesting. Just the personalities that were on stage, really interesting. I thought it was interesting how Curtis Lewa kept saying, this one's the architect and this one's the apprentice. Like Cuomo is the architect of all these terrible policies, and Zohran Mamdani wants to continue them all but has no experience to do it. He sounded somewhat reasonable, though didn't want to kick the illegals out of New York. But people were raining hell on him, Sliwa, for that. But it's like, that's what a Republican looks like in New York, who could even be considered. You can't sound like Tom Homan and even have any hope. So he did what he needed to do for where he's going in this race. Okay, but the real contest was between Cuomo and Mamdani to see if Cuomo could unseat Mamdani and make some sort of headway to change the dynamics of this race, in which he's behind by some 15 points. So that's the question. Did that happen? I'm going to kick it off with some sound. Here is, I guess we might as well start with number one since I teased it. Here it is.
You know, it took Andrew Cuomo being beaten by a Muslim candidate in the Democratic primary for him to set foot in a mosque. He had more than 10 years, and he couldn't name a single mosque at the last debate we had that he visited. And what Muslims want in this city is what every community wants and deserves. They want equality, and they want respect. And it took me to get you to even see those Muslims as part of this city. And that, frankly, is something that is shameful and is why so many New Yorkers have lost faith in this politics.
Yeah, except, that is totally false. I worked with the Muslim community for many years.
Name a single mosque you went to when you were the governor. Can you name a single mosque you went to in 10 years?
Before you were ever here.
Before I was here?
Before you were even in state government. I worked with the Muslim community. Yeah. Imams presided over State of the States. We worked in religious working groups, tolerance groups, anti-Semitic groups, etc.
All right.
Victor, what is this? I'm sorry, but what is this? We are not a majority Muslim nation. We're not a majority Muslim city in New York. We're 24 years post getting attacked by radical Muslims, and now somehow you have to swing by a mosque and be able to name it in order to be the New York City mayor?
It's ridiculous, but you're right on your initial comment. He kind of blew it. He could have said, I don't have to have a performance art appearance to tolerate everybody and treat everybody equitably. What I don't do is showboating and virtue signaling. He could have said something like that, but he kind of accepted the charge, and then he tried to contextualize it and say, well, I did other things. He should have gone right back and he said, how welcome would you be in a synagogue given what you've said about Jews and what you've said about you're going to arrest Netanyahu, a head of government. He could have said a lot of things, but that's a tragedy of this whole race, that if you look at the people who are running against him, and even Eric Adams, you added those three totalities up, they had a greater margin than Mamdani did. But they can't find a viable conservative, not even conservative, centrist candidate without baggage or that has name recognition. I like Silva like you do, but he's not going to win. And they needed somebody like a Giuliani figure and they couldn't find it. And it's going to be an off-season election. The turnout's going to be low, but for him, he's going to get every metrosexual, yuppie, upscale person who feels that their education or their titles or the letters after their name should warrant a nicer place, a nicer lifestyle, and they can't afford it in New York. So they're really embittered and they're angry and they're left wing. So he's going to win probably with 10% of the resident population of registered voters.
It's like there are 9%, Muslims are 9% in New York City, 9%, not even double digits. And now this guy wants to make it some sort of a litmus test on whether you can be mayor if you swing by a mosque. This is like, look, I don't think this is going to make the difference in this election because New York is so woke and annoying. But I think to the outside world, this is like shocking. This is the guy who, this video came out during the course of the campaign of him eating rice with his hands. And he tried to lean into this. Here he is in SOT 3. This came out from Uncivilized Media in 2023.
So the third holy grail of taboos in American politics, you have socialism, you have Islam, and then you have Palestine. And you are really going for the trifecta.
Let's go, baby.
Let's go. Tell me, why is Palestine a part of your politics?
When you grow up as someone especially in the third world, you have a very different understanding of the Palestinian struggle.
Oh, Lord. The third world. He comes from a very rich family. What a joke, a cosplayer. Before I give it to you, let me just show you what Charlie Kirk had to say about that video.
And people say, I like Mamdani because he's authentic. But authentic to what? And what is he aiming towards? He's aiming towards a devolution. It's bad either way. By the way, if he eats with his rice with his hands, whether he means it or not, he's either authentically gross or he's being a fake, disgusting person. And in some of the comments of a TikTok video I made, people said, but Charlie, who are you to judge other cultures? No. That's the point. We in Western culture believe that our way of life is the best. We're better than Mohammedism. We don't do female genital mutilation. Well, I guess the trans people do, but we don't do female genital mutilation. We in the West don't have child marriages. We don't believe in honor killings. We don't believe in polygamy. We believe in American exceptionalism. We believe our culture is better. You see, in the modern world, happiness is the goal, feelings are the guide, judgment is the ultimate sin, and God is the ultimate guess. And let me say that again, judgment is the ultimate sin. You're not allowed to judge others. Guess what? I'm going to judge you if you eat rice with your hands. That's bad. That's wrong. Assimilation is a necessity, not a suggestion.
Can you imagine if anyone on stage had the guts to say something like that, Victor?
Yeah, I think he would actually resonate. But almost everything Mamdani has said in the past, he's lying. That he says, that he said the police were racist. He said he wanted to defund the police. What's very strange, he said, when they asked him about disarming Hamas, he said, I don't have time. I don't get involved in Middle East politics. But then he says he's going to arrest Netanyahu, which is about as involved as you can get. He's a complete phony. He's a spoiled brat. He his father was an apologist for Idi Amin and had connections with that horrific government. And he's, as you say, he's a multimillionaire. And then he is from the wealthiest ethnic group in America. Indian Americans in per capita income have the highest income. And he has the gall to say he's going to go after affluent white neighborhoods. He should say, as a member of the most privileged and wealthiest per capita income group, those of Indian American background, I'm going to target my community first and make them pay their fair share because they're the most affluent. And I come from the most affluent area. He can't even do that. He's a very scary guy because he is charismatic. He reminds me of Obama when Obama first emerged on the scene. Obama was a very radical guy. He was involved with Tony Rezko, Bill Ayers. He had all this baggage. And then he just did just what Mamdani did. He smiled and he said he didn't want to judge people. He went to that early 2004 convention and he wowed everybody saying there's no red state, there's no blue state, we're going to unite people. And everybody thought everybody felt if I can just vote for this guy and unite America, he's a healer, he's half black, he's half white, this is what America needs. And that was all a ruse. And he became the most divisive, racially obsessed president in history. And this guy is the same, he's doing the same thing. He's smiling and acting as if he's ecumenical and he is divisive. It's not going to end well for New York. He's going to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't seem like it's going to get stopped by anything at this point. No. Here was the most telling moment, and I will give it to Mamdani. It was he easily won this exchange. It was a great line. And he hit Andrew Cuomo exactly where it hurts. And it was completely fair and on point and got to the heart of why so many of us, while we would never vote for Mamdani, cannot picture pulling the lever for Andrew Cuomo either. Just cannot do it. Thank God I moved out of New York because honestly, Victor, I was there for 17 years. I could not vote for Andrew Cuomo. I couldn't do it. But I can't vote for Mamdani. I would vote for Curtis Sliwa. If he drops out, I think I'd not vote. I just can't. Andrew Cuomo's a terrible man. And he did directly, thanks to his policies, lead to the deaths of over 12,000 New Yorkers in nursing homes. He was told, do not send COVID-positive patients into nursing homes. That's exactly where the people are dying. And he was warned by the nurses. He overruled them. He never admitted it. Then he downplayed the number of deaths. He lied about it repeatedly. This is not a good person. So this is embodied in the following exchange, top 5.
In other words, what the Assemblyman said is he has no experience. And this is not a job for someone who has no management experience to run 300,000 people, no financial experience to run $115 billion budget. He literally has never had a job. On his resume, it says he interned for his mother. This is not a job for a first-timer. Any day, you could have a hurricane, you have, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing,
Cuomo.
people could die.
Mr. Mamdani, you want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience.
Yes.
That was amazing. I mean, that was a 10.
I don't know. Did you think, maybe I'm just alone in that, but when watching Cuomo and comparing him to, say, 15 years ago, I don't know, that horrific thing he did with the rest home deaths and then all of the sexual harassment charge, he looks like a broken person. He doesn't have the same spunk. He's not quick in repartee. And he just put on it was like he delivered on a platter the line about experience. And then he said we could have a health pandemic. And you know that Mamdani was ready for that and memorized that. And he just put his head in the jaws of an alligator and he was chopped off. But he looked so slow and he didn't look like his heart was in it. And he didn't seem, Silva did, but he didn't. It was just, I guess what I'm trying to say, he seemed like a broken person. He really did, a broken politician. And he knows he's going to lose. And he knows he's going to lose and he doesn't know what to do about it. And he's, 10 years ago, he would have sliced Mamdani up, 15 years ago, but not now.
Yeah, I was watching him too, Victor, thinking, what happened to him? Like, this isn't, how is this the politician everybody thought ought to be, not everybody, leftists, wanted drafted into the presidential race against Trump? Remember when we were having that discussion? This guy, like, he's a shadow of his former self. He's very skinny. I don't know if he's on Ozempic or what, but he's gotten like physically more frail and he seems emotionally more frail. I agree with you. He did not seem like the fighter who is Mario Cuomo's son. And that's the only kind of version of him that had a shot in making up a 15-point difference between now and Election Day. It's not going to happen. Here is some more dishonesty, though, for what it's worth, from Mamdani, who got up there now after saying it someplace by our count between 10 and 15 times that he wanted to defund the police. Now he doesn't want to defund the police. That's not true. That's changed. Here it is in SOT 6.
I am looking to work with police officers, not to defund the NYPD, looking to ensure that officers can actually do one job when they're signing up to join that department.
Okay, and then they asked him, Victor, what do you mean now, right? Because you've been going after cops nonstop. You've called them terrible things. Like you've had nothing but scorn for police officers. And are you taking that back? Because he said, okay, well, I have an apology for those cops. Like, I apologize to cops. And they said, what specifically are you apologizing for? The words that you used, the language you used, or the thinking behind the attacks that you were making? And he said, quote, the issuing of the apology is to reckon with the fact that it's language that I'm applying to the officers, the language, when in fact, what I'm speaking about are specific practices. What he seems to be saying there is, I shouldn't have used the language I used about cops, but the thinking remains the same. So he wants to get credit now for, I guess, not wanting to defund the cops, even though I'll just read to you. Cops are wicked and corrupt. There's no negotiating with them. Defund it, meaning the police department, dismantle it, end the cycle of violence. We don't need an investigation, the separate one, to know NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. What we need is to defund the NYPD. Goes on, no fake cuts, defund the police. Another one, we want to defund the police. Another one, queer liberation means defund the police. So now he's had to run around because people love the police in New York and try to apologize for calling them wicked, corrupt, racist, a major threat to public safety. But he seems to be splitting the baby, saying the words were wrong, but the sentiment, the ideas were right.
It's kind of funny because, I was a classicist, and there was this sophistic movement, and these were people who said that if I can convince somebody with language, it must be true, whether it is or not, because they wouldn't believe me if it wasn't true. But there's a very famous line in Euripides' play, The Hippolytus, where he says crazy things, and he said, my tongue said it, I didn't say it. So
Sounds
I'm not
familiar.
responsible. Yeah, my heart didn't say. The Greeks thought your brain was in your heart. And he said, my heart didn't mean it. It's my tongue, was as if your tongue have a life of its own. And it says these things and it has no connection.
That's going to be Jay Jones's defense in a minute, too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it wasn't me. So, they're going to let him get away with this because he's leftist and he was very disciplined in his message of economic inequality and economic opportunity. And I'm going to tax the so-called rich who aren't allegedly paying their fair share. I want them to have to pay 52% in taxes. They have to go up another 2%. And that's going to fund everything. That's going to fund my bus program, my, quote, free bus program, my city grocery stores. And he seems to think that there is like an endless well of money amongst rich people. And there isn't. Here's a little bit of that in SOT 10.
But the question is how you'll make them free.
We will fund the revenue that would have otherwise been brought in from fares. And that's something that we would do in partnership with Albany. And I've put forward two proposals. The first is to raise taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers by 2%. That would raise $4 billion. The second is to raise the state's top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey, which would raise $5 billion.
That's his solution. And this city is about to bless it.
The problem New York has is that about 40% of the people don't pay either on the subway or they just jump the turnstile, as we saw with the murdered DeCarlos Brown. He didn't even pay to get on that bus in Carolina. So the idea that all of these public transits are in the red because they cannot collect fares because during COVID or after George Floyd, it was considered wrong to enforce ticket gathering or paying to use mass transit. And then he comes along and says, well, the problem is that we make people pay too much, when the real problem is they're not really, a whole segment of the population never pays anyway. And so does he think that the people who jump the turnstiles in mass numbers are therefore better citizens because they get to have free subway or free buses? I mean, I don't understand it. There's so many people.
Meanwhile, he's got this leftist belief that there's just an endless supply of rich people who will stay in New York forever and be his guinea pig, be his piggy bank, not guinea pig, piggy bank. And I'm here to tell you it's not true. I mean, I know a lot of rich people who live in New York City and they're fleeing. They already were fleeing post-COVID and that nonsense, but they're fleeing right now in anticipation of this guy winning. The pot of billionaires and millionaires from whom he has to steal is smaller than ever. I'll just give you one example. So we moved from New York to Connecticut in 2021, and we sold our apartment on the Upper West Side, and we just went back just for kicks to see like what was going on with our apartment because we heard that it was for sale. And it's for sale, and it's almost 30% discounted from where we sold it. Post-pandemic, when people were not running into the city, that was a tough time to sell the apartment, trust me. So it's like it was already at like a market decline. And since then, it's gone down almost 30%, this beautiful, almost new apartment, because of him, because people see what he's about to do and they're running. You know, what is it? The problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money.
Yeah, but you know what he'll do is if you look at the Castro brothers or Maduro or Hugo Chavez, any of these socialist-ass communists that take over, the first thing they do is go to wealthy people. And they say, you know what, everybody's scared of me, but I will cut a deal with you or you and you. And they get a small cadre who flip. And then they get concessions and exemptions from what he does. And I think he's going to do that. He's going to go to Wall Street and he's going to say, you know what, you're here, your family's here, I'm not going to touch you, but I want to know if you're going to support me and be on my team and shut up or give money. And there will be a lot of people who will be co-opted. I predict it. That's exactly what happened in Cuba and Venezuela. It's happened in Colombia. And anytime a socialist takes over a communist, the first thing he does, they did that in the Bolshevik reservation, they go to the aristocracy or what they call the oligarchy and they start to cut deals. And these stupid people think they'll be protected or exempted by doing business with the city, or he'll say, I'll give you a contract with the city, or I won't enforce this city tax on your firm, or something like that. And that's what he's counting on, I think. That's why he knows a lot are going to flee, but he also knows that he's talking to a lot of very, very wealthy people in New York that don't want to leave. And he's saying, if you don't want to leave, I can make it easy for you, but you're going to have to play ball with me, and you're going to be there's going to be recompense for it rather than punishment. And I bet you'll see a lot of people. And they're always deluded because in the end they always get it eventually. And that's what happened in Russia. That's what happened in China. That's what happened in Cuba. That's what happened in Venezuela. You cannot deal with these people, and yet there'll be people in New York who think they can. And Mamdani, I think, is counting on that.
He is a wolf in sheep's clothing. You know, he's affable, he's smiley, he talks a good game, but his policies are as radical as they come. If I had a nickel for every friend of mine in New York who said, you got out just in the nick of time, you know, good for you. We're so envious that you sold and you got out, and that's how we feel too. Thank God. I mean, Connecticut's better. It's still leftist, but it's not as leftist as that city's about to go. Let's keep going, because the real interesting one for me is the one down in Virginia. We never pay attention to a state attorney general race, right? Like, that's not really something we cover at the national level. But this one's very telling because it's a statement on the Democratic Party in today's day and age, in the wake of Charlie's assassination and the growing threats and attempts on the lives of Republicans. This guy running for attorney general, the Democrat, dreams and fantasizes and waxes poetic about shooting his Republican rivals in the head with 2 bullets. And not just that, but their children too, gleefully discussing the possibility of watching them die in their mother's arms. And then triples it down on it when chastised by a Republican colleague saying, you sound like a monster. What are you saying? Stop that. I'm uncomfortable. Doesn't even take the hint. Goes back repeatedly to say, no, you need to hear me out. This is why I'm right. They'll never change their policy positions unless they feel the pain. And it's not a rhetorical use of that phrase. It's, I want their children dead. And there's a couple things I want to point out on this. So that Democrat is named Jay Jones. He's challenging the incumbent, Jason Miyares, for the position. And Jay Jones had been winning prior to this scandal breaking. Now it's neck and neck. And Tucker had on a Virginia state delegate named Terry Kilgore, I think yesterday, And he put some perspective on just why, in addition to the obvious, Jay Jones's texts were so abhorrent. Listen here to SOT 14.
The General Assembly all the time. Everybody knew the Gilbert kids, and Jay Jones would have known the Gilbert kids. That's what's terrible about this whole situation. It wasn't like, hey, I want to kill a kid who's from another country. You would know these kids, because you're around the General Assembly. Talked to him this past week just to check on him. And the bad thing about it is now there has to be police presence where his kids are. And that's what's because they still receive threats.
It's amazing that Jay Jones, who wants to be the top law enforcement official of the Commonwealth of Virginia, directly put those children in danger, directly put their lives in danger. And just one more for you, Victor. This is Jason Miyares, the Republican and incumbent, raising some of those same points last night at the debate to his opponent, Jay Jones, SOT 13.
I have to make this observation. He keeps saying that he is sorry. Jay, if you're really sorry, you wouldn't be running. If you really understood the ramifications of what you said about an innocent mom and her children, you know Todd Gilbert. You served with him. Jennifer would come to the General Assembly. She would bring her children. We would see them run in the hallways. They were 2 and 5 years old at the time. This wasn't a hypothetical. This wasn't some figure that you know from far away. You actually know Todd. This is a flesh and blood real husband. Jennifer is a real mom. These are real kids. How in the world could you ever show compassion and comfort a grieving mother that has ever lost a child to violence? Because Virginians, there is no cry like the cry of a mother that has lost her child. A prosecutor knows this, because they've stood in that courtroom. Jay Jones has never understood this because he's not a prosecutor. He's a politician trying to save his career.
And what we heard from Jay Jones, and I'll play some of the sound, Victor, after you weigh in, but was basically, I'm sorry for the texts. I don't stand by those sentiments. And Donald Trump is bad, and I'm the only one who will fight Donald Trump, the evil Donald Trump. This guy won't do it.
Yeah, I think when you had these left-wing funded campaigns for attorney generals, it was actually really brilliant what George Soros did. He said to himself, if you really want to change America, you want to get attorney generals and local prosecutors because they can most directly influence the culture by letting criminals out, not indicting them or not sentencing them or letting them out on amnesties. And they went out and picked the most left-wing radical people, whether it was Keith Ellison in Minnesota or Letitia James or Mr. Jones. And when you do that, you get this other baggage, like you do with Letitia Jones and Keith Ellison and Jay Jones. And there was what was even, it wasn't as bad, but in some ways it was even more glaring in a sense was he didn't drive 80 miles an hour or he didn't drive 85. He didn't drive 90. He didn't drive 100. He didn't drive 105. How many people, Megyn, have you ever met drove 116 miles an hour? That deliberately was saying to people, I'm going to drive this fast, and if anybody is in my way, or they're going to be dead, and I don't care. And then when he was sentenced, he used his own PAC or this thing that was related to him for the community service. So everything about it
wasn't real community service.
No, it wasn't. Everything about him is distasteful. He's trying to be he reminds me of Mamdani. He's trying to smile and be smug, but he never comes to terms at the state, as you say, that the head law enforcement officer of Virginia is telling the people of Virginia, I have threatened to kill people. I would like people to be dead, little children, and I have driven 116 miles an hour. And anybody else who did that would be in jail for a year for reckless endangerment, etc., felony. And I didn't have any consequences really at all. In fact, I used that sentence for my own political advantage. It's disgusting that he's even on the stage.
For the rule of law, he's made that clear. That did come up, that incident, the reckless driving incident last night. Here's Miyares raising the issue in SOT 15.
The reality is that Jay Jones was in court for going 116 miles an hour on Interstate 64. 4 people were in court that day, were going roughly the same speed. 3 of those 4 people got suspended or active jail sentence. But Jay Jones is a politician, and he asked the court not to give him any of that, to give him community service. And instead, we now know he misled the court. That community service, it wasn't done for a charity. It was done for his own political action committee that he controlled. Jay, if you were to apply to be a line prosecutor in not just my office, any attorney general office in the country, you would not pass a background check. And right now, you may say that you are sorry. But look back at what happened. You had 3 years to say you're sorry, Jay, and you didn't.
That's very effective to me. I'm just going to say one thing. Jason Mraz got an issue with the hair. It's like greased down. It looks kind of greased down and smushed to his head. I'm sorry. I'm rooting for him, but it looks a little like off, a little smarmy. Someone needs to do something about that because women do respond to things like hair, and that needs an intervention. I don't know what maybe they're too afraid to tell him. I'm not too afraid to tell you, sir. You need to get rid of some of that oil out of the hair, gel, or whatever you're doing. You've overdone it. It's okay if it's like a little fluffy. You went too far, but your rhetorical points are excellent.
Yeah, I think as somebody who's bald, men that are bald think I'll take it, well, no matter what it looks like. At least it's hair. But there's a larger trend, and I have to be very careful what I say here, but when you look at Letitia James and her racialized campaign and her various houses that she had, or you look at Mamdani, he's a multimillionaire from a multimillionaire family, and you look at Jones, who's from an old, wealthy, established African-American family, and you look at the year 2025, when race and class are divergent now, there's no real connection. So what we're talking about is very affluent people like James, like Mamdani, like Jones. And at some point, they all play the ethnic card. He did he talked about all of these civil rights things, and he couldn't do this. And Mamdani's talking about the poor Muslims, and Letitia James is talking about a white Donald Trump doing this. And I think most people are saying, you know what? Whether I look at The View or Oprah or Michelle Obama, I'm tired of equating race with persecution and bias and poverty. In fact, we've been 60 years into the civil rights and affirmative action, which is the prototype of DI, and there's very little connection anymore with a lot of ethnic groups and social oppression, poverty, white bias, if at all. So you get this really ridiculous Orwellian where these very wealthy, privileged people get up on the stage and then they start self-referencing their victim status. And they all do it in a different degree. Mamdani does it all the time. And so does Letitia James, and he did it with about his family's work, and I honor that. I honor that, all that. But he's not a victim any more than Cory Booker is a victim, even any more than Jasmine Crockett, the prep school girl, is a victim. And I think people just have to just say that. And say, we are tired as Americans of all different backgrounds of these people who are the most privileged 2%, 5%, 1% of the country, and then they make us feel as if we owe them something because their religion or their gender or their sexual orientation or their skin hue is not of the majority, and therefore they deserve special consideration or exemption for what they do or say. And that's what the subtext is. All of these people think, I don't need to be judged by the way most people are judged because I have extenuating circumstances. I'm a proud Letitia James black woman. I'm Mamdani who came from Africa, and I'm a Muslim, and you don't go to the mosque. And same thing with Keith Ellis. All of them do it. And yet they're all very privileged, and we're supposed to go along with this farce. And I think that's one reason people are getting very, very sick of it. And I hope
I'm dying to show you the Michelle Obama sound bites. It's everything in me to not run them right now, but we're on the Virginia debate, so I'm going to hold them, but just put a pin in that exact thought that you just expressed, because it's the perfect tee up to what we're going to play from her. But before we get to her, let's stick with the debate. I do want to show Jay Jones. First, he apologizes for the texts, and here is how that sounded, SOT 11.
Now tonight, you're going to hear two very different visions for the future of this Commonwealth. And you're also going to hear from my opponent about text messages that I sent that I deeply, deeply regret. Let me be very clear. I am ashamed. I am embarrassed. And I'm sorry. I am sorry to Speaker Gilbert. I'm sorry to his family. I'm sorry to my family. And I'm sorry to every single Virginian. I cannot take back what I said. But you have my word that I will always be accountable for my mistakes. This race has always been about more. It's always been about each and every one of you and the future of this Commonwealth. Because when Donald Trump fires workers, defunds our schools, and levies tariffs that destroy our regional economies, sends armed troops into cities and defunds law enforcement, he has a willing cheerleader here in Jason Miyares.
Okay, so that was number one. Now he's deeply sorry. But his first response when this text message scandal broke was not to say, I am so sorry and I'm so embarrassed. I don't even know what to say. I'm humiliated. It was to attack Donald Trump. That's what his initial instinct was. He was like, Donald Trump is this and my opponent sucks and I will not be brought down by this kind of whatever. And it wasn't until shortly thereafter that clearly his team got to him and said, no, not it. There's only one right thing to do, and that is to apologize, that he then issued a sheepish like, oh, and by the way, I'm sorry for my texts. Now, by the time he gets to the debate, he knows he needs to genuinely sound sheepish. And he then says, my party held me accountable. How? Literally, no one's called for him to step down. No one has withdrawn their endorsement, most notably not the woman running for governor above him, Abigail Spanberger. No one's calling for accountability. And that was raised, and this is how that went. SOT 12.
Why should voters trust your judgment moving forward?
Well, look, Brett, I want to say one thing. Jason Miyares can't prosecute a case against Donald Trump, that's for sure. And I will also say this. I was held accountable by my party, and I deeply, deeply respect that. But what about when Donald Trump used incendiary language to incite a riot to try to overturn an election here in this country? What about when Winsome Sears used violent language about people who disagree with you and her and your extreme position on abortion? I've taken accountability for my mistakes. It's time you take accountability too.
And let me ask you just one more time, Delegate Jones, just so we're clear and the voters understand, why do you think they should trust your judgment based upon these two events that we've discussed?
I've taken accountability for my mistakes, and I know that people in Virginia right now demand and deserve leaders who accept when they make mistakes and can acknowledge that and have been held accountable. This job right now demands someone who will hold Donald Trump accountable.
And Jason Miyares got up there and said, how have you held yourself accountable? If you were holding yourself accountable, you would have dropped out of this race because you cannot possibly get this job and sit with the parents of murdered children, which unfortunately is part of being in law enforcement, and have anybody trust you that you actually feel any sort of empathy for them, especially if they're Republicans, since your thoughts are in writing. And by the way, Victor, I did pull up the original statement that he gave when National Review broke this story. First, he ignored repeated requests for a comment, then later put out a statement blaming Miyares and Trump. Quote, like all people, I've sent text messages that I regret, and I believe violent rhetoric has no place in our politics. But let's be clear about what is happening in the attorney general race right now. Jason Miyares is dropping smears through Trump-controlled media organizations, that'll be news to the folks at NR, to assault my character and rescue his desperate campaign. This race is about whether Trump can control Virginia or Virginians control Virginia. And it was only until later that he put out an actual apology. That's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, we know he didn't mean it because he just said, I've taken responsibility, but basically what I said, wanting the death of small children in the arms of their mother, is not as bad as my opponent because he agrees with half the country, Donald Trump, and he voted with half the country, and he likes what Donald Trump is doing with basically half the country. And therefore, that in itself is as bad as what I've done. The worst thing about it was the whole context of why he said that was because the Speaker of the legislature it was in the process of commemorating an African-American legislator who had died, as I recall. And so I think the people out there would think, well, if somebody tries to be ecumenical and healing in racial affairs and wants to have a resolution honoring a person, and this guy, the Attorney General, then attacks him in a way, how is he going to treat me as a Virginian when I have a legal problem or I'm indicted and his attorneys will take orders from him? Is he going to give me a good, what could I do to win his approval? If somebody who had praised a deceased African-American iconic legislator earned that from him, how would that affect me as a Virginian? So, and then they could also say, if I go 90, are they going to press charges against me? Can I apply for, I don't know, community service with my own organization? That's what he's the chief law enforcement officer, and he has zero credibility. And he really doesn't feel at all bad about it. He feels bad that he got caught. And you made a good point. Anybody that knows National Review, and I wrote there for 21 years, I was working for them, they were the most anti-Trump vehicle as much as anybody on the left for years. So the idea that this is some Trump news organization, the whole thing is demagoguery, and he reminds me a lot of Mamdani. And this is the new Democratic Party, where they want to have all of these new neo-socialist radicals, and then they can't do background checks on them because they got to where they were by all this racialized invective and hatred. And then they get into positions where they want to run the country, and then this comes out, and then they either play the race card or the religion card, or they say that their opponent is Trump. And that's why the Democratic Party is I'm not saying it won't pick up seats because of its power in the street and the foundations and academia, and they have a lot of resources, but no one wants them. Nobody wants what they have to sell. I think the majority
this is the party that gave us silence is violence, right? They're the ones who say that after a mass shooting, after any Republican says or does anything that they don't like, every other Republican has to be asked about it. Do you denounce? You denounce it, like silence is violence. And now they have a guy actually calling for the murder of Republicans and their children, and no Democrat has called for this guy to step down. No, not one prominent Democrat. And not only that, but you look at the leftist messaging around this guy, Jay Jones, and what actually went down here, and it's lies. It's total. Listen, I'm sorry to do this to you, but here's Joy Behar on The View. Listen to what they are peddling. This is 24 hours ago to their audience about this whole scandal, SOT 16.
Can I mention, because what's come up in this conversation is this individual, Jay Jones, who's running for Attorney General in Virginia. He's about a 36-year-old man running for Attorney General who had some leaked text messages come out where he aspired to violence against Republicans. I don't know why it's hard for people, and I'm not this table.
I saw that.
Let me just say
but
this.
But only Democrats denounced him, no Republicans.
But he's a Democrat.
Yeah,
but that's my point.
The Democrats
we
denounced him.
Yeah. But if I can finish my point,
all right.
Denounce both. We don't need to equivocate. We don't need to say, well, he did this, so then Republicans.
But here's
both are terrible. Both are equally awful.
Okay, so she was too interested in her own point to listen to the inanity coming at her from right field there. That only Democrats denounced Jay Jones, no Republicans, Victor.
I don't know what to say. I mean, she's she's an ignoramus, but it's so wild. It's just so insane. And one thing about all of these people, you mentioned John Bolton, but when Trump is anywhere in the equation, no one ever says, I didn't do what I did. Jack Smith doesn't say, I didn't surveil the phone records, or I didn't get free legal counsel, or Letitia James says, I really didn't do this, I didn't sign this affidavit and lie. And it's
very telling.
Joan, he never says, I didn't really get preferential treatment in my sentencing. And I didn't really exceed the speed limit at 116 miles and endanger people. They never really say, they always say it, they bring in Trump somehow. This is inordinate, he's after me, I'm speaking truth to power. But they never
ever Bolton, my behavior was lawful, which is not at all the same thing as I didn't do it. Not at all. You ask me if I robbed the bank, the answer is no, I didn't do it. I don't say my behavior was lawful. What? I mean, you put it in that context, it's very obvious what this person's doing. And it's very obvious to me what John Bolton's doing as well. We're going to talk about him in just a minute, along with Michelle Obama. Stand by. We will be right back. VDH is with us for the show today. I've been talking a lot lately about Riverbend Ranch because I love their steaks. Riverbend Ranch has taken Black Angus beef to a whole new level. For the last 35 years, Riverbend Ranch has been creating a very elite Angus herd by using ultrasound to select genetically superior cattle with a focus on flavor and tenderness. When you purchase from Riverbend Ranch, you're not only supporting the 64 cowboys and cowgirls and their families who work on the ranch, but you're also supporting over 260 other U.S. ranches and the hundreds of American families who work on them. It is born in the USA, raised in the USA, and processed here too. It's aged to perfection for 21 days and shipped directly from the ranch to your home. This is not your average Black Angus beef. So order from riverbendranch.com. Use the promo code Megyn for $20 off your first order, and let me know what you think. riverbendranch.com, promo code Megyn. We are going on the road. Megyn Kelly Live, 10 stops across the country. Join me for no BS, no agenda, and no fear live. I'll be joined by Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, Glenn Beck, Adam Carolla, Charlie Sheen, Piers Morgan, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Erica Kirk. And I cannot wait to see all of you. Please go, and please, if you can, sign up for the VIP meet and greet so that you can meet me in person and the guest as well. I would just love to hear from you guys on what's on your mind, what you like about the show, what you would like to change, and just for us to connect in what's been a difficult time. To send a message that we will not be silenced. It's Megyn Kelly Live, presented by YRefi and SiriusXM. Go to MegynKelly.com to get your tickets now. Okay, before we get to Bolton, let's spend some time on Letitia James, who is out there like, I am woman, hear me roar. I feel no fear. I am not afraid. She's loving every minute of this. Great. I hope you do love it, because you're probably going to face an amended complaint sometime soon. She's been indicted by Trump for a Virginia property that they allege she lied about when she applied for her mortgage, saying it was going to be her primary residence, and it never was. It was never her primary residence, and she knew that at the time, they allege, that she applied for the mortgage, which would be mortgage fraud. Now, the news hits yesterday and today in a pair of reports. Daily Mail yesterday, New York Post today. Daily Mail yesterday reporting that the person living in the allegedly problematic residence is Tish James's grandniece. So I think this is her sister's child, Nakia Thompson, along with Thompson's 3 children. So she's got great grand nieces and nephews. And they're living in this 3-bedroom property in Norfolk, Virginia, and have been since 2020. Daily Mail discovered that Nakia Thompson is officially listed as absconder, an absconder, who's being sought by authorities in North Carolina for failing to finish her probation. On the North Carolina website is an appeal for information leading to her whereabouts, along with a mugshot and an offender number. It is 0898340. The communications director for the North Carolina Department of Corrections says Ms. Thompson was sentenced to probation for misdemeanor convictions for assault and battery, and trespassing too, and has willfully avoided probation supervision, and absconder is considered a fugitive. Thompson faces arrest if she's located in North Carolina. So Tish James is accused here of harboring a fugitive at her fraudulently mortgaged Virginia property. In 2005, this grandniece, Nakia, was placed on probation in Forsyth County, North Carolina, simple assault. The following year was handed a suspended sentence for 2 counts of assault against a governmental official. In 2011, she was given a suspended sentence for assault and battery and second-degree trespass, again by a court in Forsyth County. This appears to have been the offense for which Thompson became an absconder. On her Facebook page, she appears to make light of her criminality. One post shows blood spattered on a black background and the words, "Knick-knacks crime, grand larceny," a crime she was actually charged with, reports the Mail. According to her LinkedIn page, she has worked in various jobs, including a debt collections representative, a stalker at Walmart, and a cashier at Wendy's. In 2018, she worked for Tish James's campaign for 4 months as a seasonal representative, reads her profile. Okay, let me just finish this up. Today, in the Daily Mail, get a follow-up piece. New York Post, follow-up piece of sorts, saying Tish James is housing another felon in her other Virginia property, who also is, I believe, a grandniece. Yes, a grandniece. This one is named Kayla Thompson Hairston, and she is, we believe, the sister of our first star, who I just read about, Nakia. Here she is, Victor. Are you familiar with the website OnlyFans, my friend? Have you heard?
No, I have not.
Okay. OnlyFans is where girls like this who want to make some extra dough on their bodies go and pose in nothing or next to nothing, and they can make a lot of money doing that. And that's what Letitia James's grandniece is doing. Kayla, not to be confused with Nakia, the fugitive. Here she is. Here's the Kayla, the other felon, accused felon that she's harboring in her other property. She's 21. She's an OnlyFans star with a public X-rated social media presence. She was charged in April 2024 with lying about her felony criminal record when she tried to buy a gun in Suffolk, Virginia, according to court documents. Mm-hmm. Kayla was legally disqualified from owning a firearm, reports the New York Post, due to an August 2020 felony charge of malicious wounding. What is that, you might ask? Virginia law defines it as a crime in which a person, quote, shoots, stabs, cuts, or wounds any other person, or by any means causes bodily injury with the intent to maim, disfigure, disable, or kill. Since Thompson Harrison was a juvenile at the time, the records are sealed. When she was just 15 years old back in 2019, she was also caught up in the criminal hijinks of her big sister, Nakia. That's the lady at the first property, who is a wanted fugitive by the North Carolina authorities. So somehow she was caught up in Nakia's alleged criminal wrongdoing as well. It sounds like an absolutely lovely family, Victor. Sounds like Letitia James has got all of her ducks in a row, but let's check in on her messaging. SOP 37. Fist in the air, taking in the applause. This is your moment, Tish.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I've got your back.
Okay, that was just the setup. She was at a Zohran Mamdani rally, so of course the crowd loved her. And here's what she said, SOT 38.
You see, I know what it feels like to be attacked for just doing your job.
Oh, God.
But I also know what it feels like to overcome adversity. And so I stand on solid rock. And I will not bow. I will not break. I will not bend. I will not capitulate. I will not give in. I will not give up. You come for me, you gotta come to all of us.
Okay.
All of us. Every single one of us. We're all in this together.
Together. Okay, she's lost her mind. I don't know if we are all in it together, because I'm not harboring a felon and a fugitive, respectively, in my two homes for which I allegedly committed mortgage fraud down in Virginia, Victor. I don't know. Maybe she has a lot of people like that in her constituency. Not sure.
Why is she a victim, though? She bragged in both of her races, and her reelection and her original campaign to be attorney general. She was going on. She said, "I have my eye on Trump Tower." She went out and used the law and manipulated it, and then was reversed on the fine, at least, and probably will be on the charge. So it's a matter of fact that there was nothing to her legal case, and she persecuted someone, and she used racialized language when she did it. And so she's a perpetrator. She's a victimizer. She's not a victim. And then, the other thing that's really disturbing, when you went through those sentences, why are all these people getting suspended sentences? And I thought it was against the law to knowingly harbor a fugitive. I thought it was a felony. If a person has a writ out and they're in your home and you know that, and they're evading law enforcement, it seems like that is a crime. And I thought if you were a statewide elected officer in New York and you're attorney general, your primary residence had to be in the state.
It
so
does.
Is there no why doesn't somebody say, if you say that your primary residence is not in the state, then you're liable to recall or dismiss or some consequences. But the common theme with all of this is, if I say enough anti-Trump stuff, or if I play the victim or the race or the gender, whatever the card is, then I get an exemption. And I know that it'll work because it's worked in the past. And then it's almost Orwellian, just for her to get up there after what she did by distorting and manipulating the law to go after a political opponent, and then to get elected on that basis, and then to play that she's a victim and they're going after her, and she's got all this criminal exposure and liability, and she hasn't paid no price for it. None of her family they get suspended sentences. They're evading law enforcement. I thought, when they found out, the next scene would be, I don't know, a SWAT team like that went after Donald Trump or something. They would show up at the house and they said that we have a warrant out for your arrest and we're going to arrest you. And they didn't even do that, apparently. So I guess the idea that they assume these political officials are, and I guess on the left, that once you stake out this premise that you have been wronged or historically wronged or you're a victim, then any type of behavior is okay and there won't be consequences. And the sad thing is, I think they're right. It works. And Mamdani is even playing a victim. And so when you get these very affluent people, multiple houses, big salaries, and then they talk as if they're on the barricades and somebody's out to get them, it seems to work, at least with half the population. But it's destroying the country, that nobody has any confidence in the law anymore. They don't feel that justice will be dispensed equally.
Look at the two top law enforcement officials that we just discussed. There's Tish James, who's now accused of committing mortgage fraud in Virginia. And then there's Jay Jones, who wants to be the top law enforcement official of Virginia, who's calling for the murder of Republicans and their children. No wonder people might have their doubts about whether there really are two systems of justice here. And you're so right about Letitia James trying to play the victim here. She's the perpetrator. She all along has been like, I'll get him. She ran for office before we knew whether he'd done anything, a crime, a civil violation, anything. She was like, just trust me. I'll find the thing. I will get him. And then indeed she did. She dredged up this law that she said he violated, that the court laughed at her for when it was all said and done. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this, no one's ever been charged on this. And I think the Supreme Court, if it goes that far, will overrule this conviction because they don't like corruption charges or fraud charges that are made up like this at all. And in any event, she persecuted him. She persecuted him and tried to steal his $500 million business and celebrated it. She wanted us to look at her as like some Joan of Arc character. And now, rather than having the dignity to at least laugh this off and be like, oh, this is Trump, it's retribution, don't worry, I've got it. She's like, I will not bow, I will not bend, I will not break. You're like leaning into it, like, I love it. Oh yes, he's playing into my victim complex. This is the height of achievement for a certain sect of the Democratic Party. Like, oh my God, I actually get to be a victim.
Yeah, and I guess what's tragic about this, because I'm 72, I can remember in my teens at the civil rights movement of the 60s, its theme, what we all heard. I remember my parents grew up from my farm, and I actually heard Martin Luther King speak at Grace Cathedral. And the message originally was that anytime you give exemptions to anybody other than on meritocratic basis, it's wrong. So there was the old boy white network. And there was truth to that people who were African American were not given a fair shot and a level. I heard that term all the time. All we want is a level playing field. And then 60 years later, these so-called victims and civil rights activists have morphed into exactly what their grandparents said was wrong. And they are now saying that because even though I haven't suffered anything and I've actually gamed the system, somebody 60 years ago did and before, and therefore I'm going to do the same thing that the old white boy network did. I want exemption, I'm a victim, and I don't have to go through the regular process of meritocratic evaluation, or I don't have to have the same exposure to the law or the legal system because I'm a victim. And you wonder when it's going to end. And as I said earlier, economically, we'll get to the point where a person's gender or hue doesn't really ascertain their class status anymore, at least in a lot of cases. And
no,
this is something nobody.
I hate to take it back to The View. But I'm going to,
nobody,
because Sunny Hostin is sitting over there. She's a Black American who had stellar education, became a well-paid lawyer, became a very well-paid TV personality. Guarantee this woman makes over $3 million a year. She has a huge mansion, which we've shown before on television. In fact, we should pull that over, guys. She shows it off. Her son just graduated from Harvard. And listen to how she is still talking about her experience in this horrible place she calls America. This is in response to those few so-called young Republicans on some text chain saying terrible things, racist things and other things. She wants to pretend it's America. It's Republicans in general. Here she is with Joy Behar in SOT 17.
The Republican Party needs to deal with this. They need to find their better selves, find their better angels.
I'm not surprised that chat exists. I wasn't surprised that men, adults, ages 25 to 34,
white men, guys, by the way.
White men were speaking like that. They checked every white supremacist bigot box. They were anti-Semitic, they were misogynistic, they were homophobic, they were racist. My lived experience as an Afro-Latina in this country helps me tell the uncomfortable truths about this country with real clarity. And that's why I wasn't surprised. Trump's rise, in part, was based in racism and white supremacy. The future of the Republican Party embraces white supremacy. Please believe me the first time and only look at this chat as your proof that it is alive and well in the Republican Party.
I see. She's a victim. And Republicans are racist, notwithstanding the fact that she's made it all the way to the set of The View and is a multimillionaire. Her son just graduated from Harvard. But this country's racist and they can't stand Black people, notwithstanding, again, the fact that we just had a Black president. We have Black Supreme Court justices. We just had a Black vice president. The Democratic nominee was Black. The Republicans also ran a Black man for the presidency, for the nomination, Tim Scott, who didn't wind up getting it. But that's still, we are stuck in Jim Crow, if you listen to Sunny Hostin.
And there's a lot of people on the left, she doesn't think, that have some weird psychological squaring the circle where if they feel that a Black person is conservative, like Clarence Thomas or Winsome Sears, then they get a blank check to use a race card. There was a cartoonist that portrayed Winsome Sears, and that was right out of something in 1860s in the South. She had exaggerated lips, and then she was dancing like she was a minstrel and kind of gesticulating, and that didn't come from people on the right. If they are referring to those Republican people on that list, I don't know one major Republican that hasn't condemned it, and I think they've been drummed out of whatever official.
Nor have any of us ever heard of these people. It's like,
I've
never
never
heard of the
them.
names in there.
Nobody's ever heard of them, but we've heard of her, and we've heard of Michelle Obama, and we hear all the time, race, and then it gets the logical conclusion is, what if she doesn't do that? What if she doesn't mention race? What if she's like Tim Scott? Or what if she's like a Republican African American? And then magical things happen. They get into the world of equal opportunity, not foreordained result, and they do well, just as well as anybody else. and they don't have any victim baggage. And that's the big difference between the Republican and the Democrat, liberal, conservative, is that you have a meritocratic process. It reminds me of what Tom Sowell, I used to have lunch with him twice a month, my colleague, and he'd always say, do you have a good doctor, Victor? Do you go? And I said, yes. And he said, what he basically said is whatever group was a victim of persecution or prejudice or systematic racism, and there were people in that group that didn't get special preference, and he would want to find a doctor. So he'd always say, some of the best doctors in the United States were African Americans in the 1950s, because you had to be on a level playing field. And I said, is that true now? And he says, no, maybe I have to find other groups that have been oppressed, and therefore they've come, that it's kind of he didn't approve of that. He was just remarking on the irony of it. And so I don't think it's going to end well for the Democrats, and you can see that they know it, and they know that they are alienating the population, and all of these issues, crime, the border, illegal migration, they're not polling well. And what they have to do is they either have to change, I'll be frank, change the demography in their own words. We have 55 million people that were not born in America now. It's the highest ever, and in percentages too, 16%. Or they have to change the system. They're trying to change the filibuster or the Electoral College or the Supreme Court composition. Or they have to create what they're doing now, chaos, shut down the government, bomb Tesla, have these riots, create so much chaos that the average American just gets in a fetal position, puts his hands over his ears and say, make it all go away. I don't know who started it. I don't know how it happened, but if Trump is involved, I just want out of it. I just want calm again. That's their strategy, but it's never constructive. It's never, we are individuals. We're going to be judged on our individual merits. We're going to have compassion for those who don't do as well as we, but we're not going to mandate equality. They never say that. But they have to have a self-perpetuating victim idea because they don't have confidence that they're going to get the same income, the same privileges if they drop the victim status. And they
love it. They revel in it. I mean, so we did find the video of Sunny Hostin's house available because she filmed it and put it online. Here it is. Okay, for listening audience, it's a mansion. It's got top-of-the-line cabinetry and tiling and the beautiful wooden staircase leading up to a window seat with all beautiful windows looking out over what was, I'm sure, is a huge lawn. Now we get like her art. Okay, whatever. So Sunny Hostin has it made in this amazing, beautiful house. Obviously a multi-million-dollar property, and yet she wants you to know that her lived experience as an Afro-Latina in this country is that we are all racist, that she has proof white supremacy is alive and well because of these morons in some group chat who somehow she wants to elevate to representative of the country and certainly of Republicans.
She should go to she should go to East Palestine, Ohio, and tell people that. And just say, you know what, you guys you've done all these bad things to me, and you're just so well off because of your white privilege. And I don't think it's going to sell very.
It's of course not just her. There's, I'll get to Michelle Obama in a second, but there's a guy running for the let's see, it's the Maine Senate race. Susan Collins has not stated whether she's going to run for re-election. So right now there are 8 declared Dems running in the primary, and one of them is this guy Graham Plattner, former Marine infantryman, later served as an Army National Guard soldier and private security contractor. Starts off well. It goes downhill from there. High-profile endorsement from Bernie Sanders, outspoken economic populist. And the K-Files' Andrew Kaczynski of CNN unearthed a bunch of comments he has from an internet forum subreddits in which he calls himself a communist. He dismissed all police as bastards and said rural white Americans actually are racist and stupid. And now he's trying to dismiss these as I was just disillusioned and angry, kind of like I was younger and they don't really reflect who I am. It was 2021. I'm not sure we can get away with the youthful indiscretion text excuse when it was literally 4 years ago, and he doubled down on them repeatedly. So what she's saying, like the Republicans are racist. My lived experience is white supremacy reigns in America. And here you have this guy going out there saying white rural Americans are as racist and stupid as you might think. They're the ones saying the quiet part out loud and showing us what they think of our country. All right, I don't want to spend time on this guy because I really do want to get to Michelle Obama, and you and I have a lot to go over. A couple weeks ago, I did a fact check on the attacks coming down against Charlie. Nicole Hannah-Jones and many others have raised this comment without giving the context, where they said, oh, he says black women don't have the brain processing power to make it in life, and that those who went to Ivy League universities stole a white person's spot. Now, that is totally out of context. You have to hear what Charlie actually said, because, of course, he was talking about affirmative action, in which, yes, indeed, when it is given to a black or a brown person, and it's given to them based on skin color, a place in a university, it absolutely is, quote, stealing a spot from either a white or an Asian. And we know that because there was a whole U.S. Supreme Court case in which whites and Asians brought a complaint saying we're the ones being disadvantaged systematically by places like Harvard, and it's illegal. It's illegal race discrimination against us. And the Supreme Court agreed, 100% agreed. Here's the Charlie comment, and then I'm going to show you what Michelle Obama just said.
If we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise today as a clear recipient of affirmative action, and particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color, but I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
It's very obvious to us that you were not smart enough to be able to get in on your own. I couldn't make it on my own, so I needed to take opportunities from someone more deserving. You know, this is how arrogant Joy Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee are. They're so narcissistic, they think this is persuasive.
He's 100% right. By the way, Joy Reid went to Harvard. I mean, that's all you really need to know about what a farce affirmative action is. She went to Harvard. Michelle Obama went to Princeton. Sheila Jackson Lee went to Harvard. And Ketanji Brown Jackson did too. So Michelle Obama has already admitted before that she got into Princeton via affirmative action. That's how Charlie knew it. And listen to her. She went on the Lewis Howes podcast. It was released in May of 2025, but they cut a shorter version and re-released parts of it just now, which is how it caught our attention. And listen to what Michelle Obama says about that experience in SOT 29.
I wasn't a great test taker. I was a great grade getter, but I wasn't good on SAT. So I had good grades, not great scores. So all the scores said, you don't belong at Princeton. And there were people who saw me, saw the color of my skin and said, you're aiming too high. Sure. You imagine going to these schools being told that you're not ready. And that was my first insecurity of thinking, well, maybe I don't belong here. And that's the world telling you that you don't belong, even though it's like, well, all my experiences up until this point say that why wouldn't I belong here?
So how did you overcome that
because you had bad SATs.
Belong, or that other people are telling you you don't belong?
I got there and I looked around and went, oh my God.
Sat in a few classes
and sort of realized that affirmative action isn't just the color of your skin, but there were a lot of kids that were legacy kids. They were athletes. It was like, and then you sit in class with people, a lot of bright people, but there were a lot of people that were just, so you wonder, well, how did you get here?
Okay. So there she is saying almost exactly what Charlie said, that she did not have the scores. Another way of saying it would be brain power. It is an aptitude test to get into Princeton on her own. that they had to lower the standards for her, and they were willing to do that because of the color of her skin. But she changes it to the color of her skin led people to believe she didn't belong at Princeton. No, the color of her skin is the reason she got into Princeton and got a lifetime of advantages that she's still living high on the hog from. But she's still bitter about it, Victor, still to this day. And Charlie's being called a racist for saying exactly what she said in that clip.
Yeah, and you know, it's weird. I've spent over 50 years in academia at a number of institutions, and I can tell you that among the faculty, one of the greatest criticisms is that they do let in legacies. A lot of the legacies are very qualified, but they do let in legacies. So she says, well, there are all these legacies here and everybody doesn't, and that's as criticized as affirmative action. And I can tell you, in the CSU system that I taught in, I would get calls from coaches and say, Victor, this guy is middle linebacker, or this guy, I don't know how he ended up in your class, but if you got to do something. And he couldn't do the work. And you'd say, no, you go talk to the administrator and get him out. I'm not going to do it. He's going to get an F. But the point I'm making is that people have always objected to athletes who can't do the work but get exemptions, or rich kids that their parents get in, or people who get in on their color. But what she's saying is, well, I got in here and I found out that the guys, that some of the legacies and the athletes were no better qualified than I was. Well, yeah, that's true, but that's not a justification for it. It's right. People criticize that all the time. You know, the late Christopher Hitchens, I knew pretty well. He was a man of the left, and he had written about her Princeton senior thesis. So I knew him pretty well, and he called me up and he sent it to me, you know, PDF. And I could not understand it. I'm not kidding you. It was written in some language that I was not familiar with. It was all this fake postmodern. It was all about oppression and how alumni had to help out black students. But it was all, it was unreadable. And as someone who taught both at places that were considered prestigious and not prestigious, I could tell you that that would not have qualified. So when she says, when I got there, I felt like, why are they picking on me? Well, they've been picking on everybody who didn't get the requisite SAT scores. And I can tell you, when I graduated from college and I knew that I wanted to go to Stanford University's PhD program, and they had the LSAT, and I knew that you had to get almost a perfect score to get in, even though all your grades could be perfect. You could have 4 years of Latin. So what did I do? I did what everybody else did. I got about 6 books on the LSAT, and I studied for about 50 weeks for my whole senior year. And I remember I had little note cards I carried around everywhere with me, and I would flip them. You know, there are all these words that we never use, but if they're on the test, and if you can identify them, then suddenly you're considered a good test taker. So the point is, she says, I'm never a good test taker. Well, then improve on it. But she is naturally bright. But it's always... the tests were, so, and, you know, statistically, African-American applicants who are admitted often range between 150 to 200 points lower than whites who are admitted, about 30 to 50 points lower than Asian Americans. So we all know that. And that's not the end of it, Michelle. When you have a university, whether it's legacy or athletes, but much more numbers of DEI, then that's the beginning of it. So then the faculty, who are all left, say, if you talk to them off the record, and I used to all the time as a faculty member, well, we only have 3 choices. We either have to lower the amount of work required because we have too many students that weren't prepared, or we have to introduce new courses, or the favored route, we're going to change our grading. So Yale gives 80% of A's, Stanford's about 70% of A's, and then that's not the end of it. Then you get people in Silicon Valley you meet, and they'll say, hey, Victor, you know, this is really weird. Stanford used to have the SAT, they dropped it for 4 years, and I've noticed that coders are people in computer science, are people in the humanities. I would rather hire someone from Southern Methodist or Georgia Tech or SMU than I would Stanford graduate anybody the last 4 years. And then you say, well, why? Because they don't have the compositional skills or the training that other people from these Southern universities do, of all colors, nothing to do with race. And more importantly, when they come to workforce, they go right to HR and complain. And I would rather have somebody who was quiet and qualified rather than somebody who had to complain about me or my company or working conditions.
She's still complaining. Like, can you imagine? I would have loved to have gotten into Princeton. That would have been so amazing. I loved Princeton so much. We spent some time there just visiting one time. I would have loved to have gotten into Princeton. I couldn't get into Princeton because my grades weren't good enough and my SATs weren't good enough. And nobody was doing affirmative action for white girls from upstate New York. If I had been given that opportunity, I would be grateful to this day. Grateful to this day.
Yeah,
She's
absolutely.
still bitter. She's talking about how people looked at her and said because of her skin color, she didn't belong. I don't believe that. I don't believe that for one second. They looked at her and said, because of your skin color, we'll let you right in. Here's the door. It's wide open. Come on in. But she's got to twist it.
I can tell you that because for 21 years, I'd have graduates in classics from not a competitive school, a California State University school, and they wanted to go to the Ivy League. So they had to have a greater degree, a master's degree in classics. And more importantly, when they would apply to graduate school, I'd have, most of my students were minorities, but I have 3 or 4 white males, and I'd always say to them, you have to have a perfect SAT. You have to have a perfect SAT, and you're going to have a perfect grade, and you're still not going to get in unless we...
Right.
And then I would get a call. This is a true story. A guy called me up and said, we let in one of your students. He was brilliant, Latino student. I tutored him. And he called up and said, I find out, is it true that he's not legal? And I said, I don't know. So I asked him, and he said, no, I'm illegal. I didn't know it. And then I called back, and they said, no, he's not illegal. They were not calling me because they were worried. They were hoping that he was illegal. And when I said that, they said, oh my gosh, this is great. We have an illegal alien who's going to be a classics PhD. I said, yes. And I had African-American students. I had African-American students that were as good or no better, no worse than white male students. And I would get all the people in the room, and I'd say, I get 4 or 5 who were applying, and I'd say, this person is African-American, she is going to be admitted to Princeton, Yale, and you're not. It's just a fact. Mm-hmm. Unless you can tell me. And then to hear from the administration or the faculty that wasn't true when they knew it was true. And that's what's so bad about it. They lie about it. And then finally, even their own standards. So what happens? Yale, Stanford last year, reinstitute, very quietly, very loudly, they got rid of the SAT. And now, very quietly, they're letting it in. And the
they
reason
right back because people were not succeeding. They were
succeeding.
2 standard deviations below the average SAT score of the other students, and they were failing. Yes. Wait, I've got to get to one other because she went on. Her bitterness does not stop with the fact that she got into Princeton. In her imagination, someone begrudged her the spot or didn't think she belonged there. P.S. You didn't. I didn't belong there either. I don't think it's because I'm a woman. I didn't score high enough. That's why I didn't belong there. In any event, she's also, as we know, still very bitter about the country and her time in the White House. And you would think, I mean, if you're Michelle Obama, you're universally beloved, you call your book Becoming, you're on the cover. It's like, oh, look at me, I'm so becoming, I'm so beautiful, everybody wants to be with me. She talks about how people line up to see her at these public events, how wherever she goes out to eat, everyone's staring at her and Barack. They're the topic of conversation at every restaurant they go to. It's so difficult to be Michelle because you're just so super famous and everyone loves you. And you would think after being first lady for 8 years, you would say, I'm just so damn lucky to have been born in the United States of America, where I could go from growing up in relative poverty, sharing a room with my brother on the south side of Chicago, and it could go up to become the first lady of the United States and married to the center of power and living in the White House. Like, I love this country. I'm so grateful for what it's given me and given my daughters. No, this is how she sounded on that same podcast, the Lewis Howes Show. Stop 30.
The White House is just another Princeton, right?
Really?
And the experience was just the same. You have a lot of people saying that there's no way that this Black couple is capable of representing our country. They are not patriotic. Look at their fist bump. You know, did she really get into Princeton? Is he really from this country? You know, did he really go to Harvard? Is his, you know, it's the same kind of because we can't see past our own prejudice. Let's question, because we were told that there is an order and that you don't belong at the top, you know. And what I soon realized is that's not about me, that's about them.
Them.
Okay.
Them.
Who
are them?
Who said that? Honestly, Victor, the
Nobody said that.
Questioning whether we're patriotic. She literally said for the first time, I was proud of my country. First time in my adult life, when they nominated Barack Obama, I was proud of my country. She'd never been proud of her country before.
That's why people questioned. Remember, she said it was a downright. She said during the 2008 until David Axelrod said, you're going to be quiet. You may not like it, but you're not allowed to say anymore, because she said, I'd never been proud of my country. She said it was a downright mean country. She said they always raised the bar on us. Every time we tried to do something, they raised the bar on us. Then finally, they put her on ice. So they said, you know, you are not, basically they said to her, you're not capable of making a public statement without offending people. And by the way, in 2008, Barack Obama got more white votes than John Kerry did in 2004. And he was elected primarily by white people who voted for him, and a small minority, maybe a large minority, did it because they thought, even though he was too liberal for their tastes, some Republicans, and they thought it would be good to have a African American. The only thing that people roundly criticized Barack Obama for that he didn't earn was a Nobel Prize. And he joked about it. He knew he didn't earn that. And he knew that if he had been a white male president, he wouldn't have got it. Just like Donald Trump, who did 20,000 times more things to earn it than Barack Obama did, probably will not get it. So they know that. And so the only way that they can square that circle of their privilege and prejudice and bias in their direction is to completely play this victim game. And it's getting really pathetic. And I don't know what, I don't think it's never going to end until people who are them, whoever she considers them, say, you know what? I know that our system is fair and meritocratic. You can call me a racist. It has zero effect on me. I'm sorry.
Okay, but I can say one other thing about it, though. She doesn't seem to understand that everyone who accomplishes anything has detractors, has people who are not rooting for them. It's called human nature, okay? It's not a racism thing. It's human nature for some people to watch other people ascend and feel envious and try to take them down. But she's got to take those few naysayers, and I'm sure there was somebody who made a racist comment here or there as they were running, and elevate them to the ones she remembers. She's on this national podcast. She's asked to talk about her time as First Lady and her feelings around it, and that's where she goes. It's like she doesn't go to, so blessed, the number of people I met, the experiences I had, my world was lit up, the amount of intellectual riches that I took in. No, it's people said we weren't patriotic, that there's a social order and you're not supposed to be at the top of it. We put her in the White House. We made her husband president for 8 years. It's still not good enough. The country, somebody said something negative about me, and it had to be because of my skin color, and I'm still bitter. How many years later now? Like, get over it. Try to look on the bright side of life.
There's so many different characteristics that we all have that can hurt or help us. I think it would be a lot easier to be Michelle Obama than Governor Abbott in a wheelchair, what he had to overcome, or her middle-class existence in Chicago was a lot more conducive for her success than J.D. Vance's was with a dysfunctional, drug-ridden family in Appalachia.
Got that right.
But so everybody comes to the table with individual debits and pluses. But once you do this race thing and you think it supersedes every other consideration of individuality, and your race is essential rather than incidental to who you are, to your persona, then it's not going to work out. And you can see it puts enormous pressure on people. You took it, if an immigrant, part of our problem with immigration is that we have no civic education, assimilation, acculturation, and no appreciation. So you get Ilhan Omar coming here, and she blasts this country as garbage, and it has dictators, it's racist, or you have second-generation AOC, or you have Mamdani, and immediately their parents or they come here and they're faced with a choice. If you play the race victim card, this is one trajectory. If you don't, and you say you're really happy to be in this safe, prosperous, secure country, and that's why my parents left Puerto Rico or Uganda or Somalia, and I was so lucky to get where I am because of these opportunities, then it's not, that trajectory is going to be a lot more difficult. And so our society, because we've got so pathological, makes these choices, offers these choices, and most people take the easy way out. All you have to do is say that you were a victim, your parents were a victim, your color, your religion, it's oppressive, and that gives dividends. And it will continue to give dividends until people say, I'm bored. I've heard it so many times. Grow up and be an adult. Quit blaming everybody for your own inferiority complex or your own perception of unfulfilled life. It's not my fault. It's yours. When she says, I thought it was them and not you. No, Michelle, it's you. It's not them, not some abstract them. You were the most, on the great sense of things, you grew up in a very stable, advantageous family, and you excelled, and the society at large said we had been unfair to African Americans. So to the third or fourth generation from Jim Crow, is that we're going to continue to offer advantages for those who want to take it. You took it, good, all more power to you. But don't turn around and tell the society that they oppressed you or you're victimized when you're four houses, Martha Vineyard. You know, Barack Obama, every time he flies out, he berates African-American staffers in the Harris campaign as false consciousness. Well, you don't really know, as I do, to tell you how you're oppressed, and you don't really appreciate Kamala Harris. And he just did it the other day in an interview. Now, Hispanic men voted for Trump on inflation and gas, and they don't really understand. And what he's trying to say is they don't really feel like they're victims, and they're voting on criteria that aren't race-based. And in a Marxist fashion, I have to tell them they're deluded and they have false consciousness and correct their incorrect thinking. So arrogant, too. It's elitist. She's an elite, so is he.
She's a total elitist. And to me, I feel like, okay, Michelle, we can do the destitution derby. You know, you had an intact family for the first 27 years of your life. Your dad died when you were 27, which is too soon. But you know what? Some of us lost our dad at a much younger, more tender age. And we don't run around because of it thinking the world owes us something or that we're entitled to something. Everybody should recognize our hardship and give us a leg up and make that one negative experience become our defining existence, the defining characteristic about us, the one terrible, really sad, awful thing that happened to us. It could be an incident of racism, it could be the loss of a father. She doesn't get it. She has no tolerance for that coming from somebody else. It has to be one thing. Racism, and no matter how many advantages she gets, houses in Martha's Vineyard and Chicago and Hawaii, and I think I'm missing one, Washington, D.C., doesn't matter. Girls at the best universities, right? The husband president for 2 terms, doesn't matter. Still a victim, still angry, still a racist country. I'm sick of it. Let's be honest. Afternoons can be rough. Energy fades, cravings kick in, and focus goes out the window. The quick fix, another coffee, but that can lead to jitters or a crash later, or it can keep you up at night. Peak's Sun Goddess Matcha is another option. Whether it's how the day starts or how it gets back on track, this matcha is not just a drink. It can be a better daily habit. It gives steady energy and helps you focus without the ups and downs. This is not any matcha. It's organic, ceremonial grade, and grown in Japan's pure volcanic soil far away from pollution. It's shaded longer for more nutrients and blended by tea masters. That's how serious they are about quality. The taste is smooth, creamy, and rich, not bitter like lower quality matcha. It packs powerful antioxidants to keep you sharp and steady. And right now you can get up to 20% off for life, plus a free rechargeable frother and glass beaker. It's backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee, too. Go to peaklife.com/Megyn. That's PIQUE life.com/Megyn to try it for yourself. Again, that's PIQUE life.com/Megyn. If you've experienced bloating or general gut discomfort at some point, you know that doctors tend to give the same advice. Eat slowly, take a walk after meals, steer clear of processed foods. But let me tell you about Cowboy Colostrum. Packed with proteins, natural growth factors, and antimicrobial peptides, Cowboy Colostrum can help strengthen your immune system and repair your gut lining, leading to less bloating and better digestive health. They use high-quality ingredients sourced 100% from American grass-fed cows. Just add a 3-gram scoop of their chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry flavor to your coffee or smoothie, and you're good to go. No artificial flavors, just naturally delicious ingredients. For a limited time, get up to 25% off their entire order. Just head to cowboycolostrum.com/MK and use code MK at checkout. That's 25% off when you use the code MK at cowboycolostrum.com/MK. After you purchase, you can tell them our show sent you. We've got some very interesting things to discuss, including UFOs. Now, let me start by saying this. Our pal Walter Kirn put out a tweet this morning promising some really bizarre things were going to start happening, and one of them already happened, and I'm going to show it to you. We have it on tape, and we confirmed with him that this is in part what he was talking about. So that's a tease for our second subject here. But I'm going to kick it off with this upcoming UFO documentary via The Hollywood Reporter and Variety. It's called The Age of Disclosure. It's by a filmmaker named Dan Farah, and it features on-the-record interviews with 34 current and former senior members of the U.S. government, military, intelligence committee, and beyond, with direct knowledge of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, which is the new name for UFOs. I guess it's more inclusive. The film contends that there has been an 80-year cover-up of the existence of non-human intelligent life and a secret war among major nations to reverse engineer UFO technology. Some of those interviewed include now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and many others, including some like Lou Elizondo, who's been on the show talking about UAPs in the past. There is a documentary that is out. It just hit yesterday. There's a trailer for the documentary, and here's the trailer.
We've had repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours.
These are otherworldly things that are performing maneuvers that haven't been seen.
I have seen with my own eyes non-human craft and non-human beings.
This is so secret. There have been very few people in our entire government that have been allowed or provided access to it.
Even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis, but that begins to ramp out of control.
It's not acceptable to have secret parts of government that no one ever sees. People have been hurt protecting and hiding this information.
Some people claim it would cost them their lives if they spoke out about these things.
You had information being locked away that could change the trajectory for species.
This is the biggest discovery in human history.
The biggest discovery in human history. Sounds like Joe Rogan has seen it. My notes read, ever since South by Southwest, he's been a vocal supporter of the project gaining distribution. Quote, amazing documentary. I really hope this gets released somewhere big. Very well done. They think this documentary is going to break the dam. It's pretty intense. Our understanding is it's not going to be released until November 21st. This is just the trailer that we've gotten. It will, we're told, have a limited theatrical run in New York, LA, Washington, D.C., and it will be streaming on Prime Video, again, as of November 21. So those are some legit people. I mean, Marco Rubio is a truth teller. They seem to be featuring Anna, I forget. Anna, what is it? Paulina, that's it, Anna Paulina Luna. Forgive me, I just met her at the Charlie event. She was lovely. And she's been speaking out about this. She went on Rogan to talk about this too, and she's a lawmaker who's had access to some records. So what are we to make of this claim that there's been an 80-year cover-up of the existence of non-human intelligent life and a secret war among major nations to reverse engineer UFO technology, Victor.
Well, I come to it, I don't think would be a greater skeptic than myself until this era that we're talking about of disclosure. When you look at antiquity, you would think we had some pretty empirical historians from all 2,500 years ago. So you look all through those periods, and while they do mention certain things that are a little strange, they find a corpse that's bigger than normal, or they see a comet that they think is a little you don't get any description of anybody who says there was people from a different planet. And then in addition to that, you have to approach it from the religious. I used to teach the New Testament in Greek, and you get the idea that the whole religious experience in Christianity, but also in other religions, is based on the uniqueness of life here as we know it. And then you kind of see all these characters when growing up in the 50s and 60s with all these UFO stuff, and you kind of get on the ledger where you think, well, this is not possible. But then the more and more you see these films now, and we have much greater precision in cameras, in radar, sonar, and you start to see things that maybe we didn't. You become. I'm now kind of 50-50. I'm just waiting to see something. You know what I'm saying? The elephant in the room is, if all of this is true, which I think the evidence is starting to make us skeptics re-examine our beliefs, you would think that the average person then is going to see them much more frequently than.
That's exactly what I said to my team. Yeah, before we started this segment, I made the same point. Like, why aren't skeptics seeing the UAPs? Yes. Why aren't we all running into them? There was the weird drone thing over New Jersey. Yes. We never got to the bottom of that. We have had pilots in the air, with videotape show us very bizarre objects that go faster than any aircraft that we know of on Earth could go. These are legit fighter pilots who are not nuts, and there are quite a few of them talking about what they've encountered. And it might make sense that if you were from another planet, you'd start with our military, surveilling it, seeing what it's capable of. I will say this, Tim Burchett from Tennessee was on Tucker Show 2 weeks ago or a week ago. And here's something he said. Take a listen to him.
You don't think this is our technology?
No, I do not. There's no way it is our no way is our technology. There's, I've talked to too many pilots. Why would we risk our best? I mean, I've talked to the best pilots in the world that are ours. Some of them, not all of them, and that have told me. I mean, one guy, I remember I was at the Capitol Hill Club. It was just an unusual encounter. A guy spoke to a group, and he followed me out and said, Tim, or congressman or whatever, he said that thing was 14 feet. He went like this from my canopy. And I thought to myself, why didn't he say 15? Why didn't he say 20? But he said 14. And then he said this thing, it wasn't ours. He said, I don't know what it was, but it wasn't ours. And that's all he said. And I had a very high-ranking member of the Navy describe some underwater experiences they'd had with something that was doing 200 miles. And the best thing we got is probably 40. It
was doing 200 miles an hour underwater?
Underwater, big as a football field. And that's no fish.
So is it possible, given our current understanding of physics, for any man-made machine to go anywhere near 200 miles an hour underwater?
Not with our technology, no. The best we have is probably in the high 30s.
Starting to reel me in, Victor.
Yeah, it is. But on the other hand, if somebody said there was a hypersonic missile 10, Mach 3 or something, I wouldn't have believed it. Like now the Russians and the Chinese have them. And then if somebody said there's an iron beam that can knock down incoming projectiles, or there's drones that can go, I don't know, what is this, 10 Gs or more, I wouldn't have believed it. So our technology is increasing at not an arithmetic, but a geometric rate, it seems like. So I don't know to what degree people who see these things are part of a military group or civilian group, or that there are people who are experimenting with these technologies, with drones, hypersonic lasers, that they're not communicating. I don't know to the degree that's
could
true.
It be the Chinese?
Yes, exactly. And and then the other thing is, how many light years are we away from the nearest planet that would support life? And some of them are a lot of light years. So you're talking about a type of propulsion that could go at the speed of light to get to us within a few years. It seems very improbable. And then
unless they live in our ocean.
Yes, unless they've come here before, or they're there used to be, I forgot his name, Von something. He was in the 70s. He made the argument that the Egyptians and other monumental civilizations, the Minoans, were taught their technology by people who came from outer space.
Oh, wow.
Von Daniken. I think his name was Von Daniken. And he said the pyramids were beyond the technological ability of people at the time, or the Lion's Gate at Mycenae it was so many tons, there were no methods. But he was refuted because people demonstrably showed that you could do what they did with innovative technology known at the time. It was just unusual. So I'm still a skeptic, but I'm less a skeptic, I guess, than I was, if that's a
That describes me
answer.
perfectly, too. I sign on for what you said. Now, my executive producer, Steve Krakauer, loves this stuff. He is much more in the Joe Rogan camp and the Tucker camp. He believes, and one of us will wind up being right. Although I like you, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm not ready to say it is, but I'm open-minded to proof. And this movie. Okay, so now we turn to Walter Kirn. Very smart guy, journalist, comes on the show. Yeah. And he, this morning, tweeted out something that's since gone everywhere. And he wrote the following: "Can I blow the whole UFO thing wide open for you? You won't believe me anyway. It's only a matter of time until you hear things that will rock your world, if your world is rockable. You will have a hard time verifying them, but that's true of everything you hear. It's true of unemployment statistics. They will be very specific things, however, and so far out, so beyond your expectations, they will ring your bell, and you'll hear them from people you were not ready to hear such things from. The shells are all in the cannon. It's all about who gets to shoot it and who wins and who loses when it goes off. There's money involved, lots. Hear me now, believe me later, as they say." So good. He's so good at sending tweets out like that, right? Yeah. But there's more. Yeah, give me your initial reaction to his tweet, because I'm going to show you what I think he was talking about.
Yeah. Well, I know Walter Kirn a little bit, and I really admire him. He's a really brilliant guy. He's witty. He's a great writer. I'm prejudiced a little bit because he reviewed one of my books favorably. But I just would like to know how when he gives us that assurance, I wish he would just say, these things are going to shock you because I have seen, talked, or is it this movie, or I don't know. Just give me.
All right. Well, here you want more of it. You want more info. You want more info in the tease.
Yes. But I do.
I am here to make you happy.
Okay. Good.
All right. So, we had the Walter tweet, and we knew about this UFO documentary, The Age of Disclosure, again, which comes out November 21st. And that's all we had as we came to air. And as you know, because we usually give the guests the topics, some of them at least that we're going to be discussing in advance of the show, that we were planning on talking about the UFO documentary. But then Walter drops his tweet, and we're like, wow, that's interesting. What is that about? Could it be this documentary? And he said no. And then this other thing just dropped. And this other thing is a bit from a show called American Alchemy. And there's an interview on this show that we expect to drop later tonight. And Walter has confirmed to us that this is in part, not in whole, but in part, what he was referring to. Victor, take a look at this.
Anyway, we just sat there and he unveiled this mind-blowing thing to me. Proceeded to tell me that I was part of a project that started in 1960, I believe it was. And the genesis of it was in 1947. We came in contact with an alien species. And 1960, they started a project. It was called Project Preserve Destiny. It was designed to genetically manage fetuses, human fetuses, so that they would have the heightened ability to do this particular thing that I was going to school for. My mother was one of the selected targets, or whatever you want to call it. The result of it was that it gave me the ability to have this communications.
That was in order for you to become an intuitive communicator who is basically able to receive messages from...
Well, receive and transmit.
Receive and transmit.
Yeah, communicate basically, back and forth.
And he's telling you all of this?
Yeah, he said that that's what my job would be doing, or that's what my job would be to do that, yes.
Okay, so that there was something called Project Preserve Destiny, started in 1960, in which they did something to pregnant mothers that he claims heightened the infant's ability to communicate with aliens, and that he's been told he was one such person. Now, I'd be laughing at this openly as absurd if it didn't have some sort of blessing from Walter Kirn in the form of that tweet, because he's not crazy, he's not a nutcase, but I definitely feel this is total bullshit, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. Your thoughts?
I'm kind of with you. I wish that when they interviewed him, then they showed us an MRI, a PET scan, and a CT scan, and full blood work, and then gave us some type of recording or audio version how he could use this unique ability to communicate something, just some hard data. So I'm not saying that people didn't believe that and they didn't pursue that, but it seems like every time somebody sees something or comes forward with an encounter with an alien, they don't present enough evidence to convince the skeptical. The skeptical who are not prejudiced. Yeah, and I'm not biased either way. I'm willing and eager to be persuaded. The thing that what I think they don't fully appreciate sometimes is that if what they're saying is true, it remakes everything, because you go back through all of history then and you say these people were communicating with humans and imparting knowledge, and this accounts for that, and this technological this, and wars, and all of these. It affects religion, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam. It affects everything. It would be a totality of a remaking of assumed knowledge, of empiricism, of technology, of religion, of politics, everything. If you were going to tell the American people, well, your government 65 years ago knew about aliens and they had a special division and they genetically altered people to communicate with these people and they didn't tell you, that would be something. But then the other thing finally is, well, if he had that ability, will he please tell me what they said to him? Or what were the communications? Does he have a text where he transcribed it? Or did he go in a room if they took all the trouble to genetically...
Yeah, what are they saying right now?
Yeah, they genetically altered him so then he could communicate, and they thought it was successful. Then they put him in a room, obviously, and he talked, or they looked at brain waves and they could see it, and then would just give us the data. That's all.
Yeah.
Maybe they did to Walter Kirn. I don't know, but I'm still skeptical. I'm sorry.
Maybe Walter's one of them. Maybe he's part of the experiment. We're laughing because we don't have all the information.
I would say that he's unique. In some ways, he's superhuman, but he's not a deity. So
no,
he doesn't.
Not that we know.
He doesn't have super. Not that we know of.
The alleged program, that they're talking about in here, does remind me of someone I care about. During COVID, you know how some people went got a little out there during COVID. This person was one of those, the electrical grid is going to go down. You should print out all the maps and all that. And I said to this person, where'd you get your information from? And this person said, this guy I follow on YouTube, and forwarded me a clip of the guy on YouTube. And it was like this British guy who's claiming he was a former spy, and his sources were saying the grid was going to go down. He had it on good authority. And it took me about 2 minutes to find another video of this guy claiming that he doesn't call it an alien abduction because he wanted to go. But when taken by the spaceship, he enjoyed the trip because he lost his virginity to a hologram version of his own mother. And I sent that to my friend and said, just so you know, this is the person that put that out there. And my friend said, okay, got it. But people make crazy claims like all the time regarding aliens. And I do think I don't know, Victor, I think there's a fair amount of people, forgive me, I don't know anything about this man. Maybe I'll be persuaded. Steve tells me this American Alchemy thing just dropped. It's 3 hours long on YouTube. Maybe we'll watch it and we'll both be true believers. But I think there's a high level of people who are on the edge of like fully, not sane, but like they're very tempted by things like this. There's something that's very alluring about things like this without evidence.
Yeah. Yes. If I were to assess, just as a disinterested historian or something, what the status of the question is on UFOs, I would say the needle has moved because there are 30 years ago, the people who were claiming this were suspicious, or they were kind of conspiracy theories. And now, for whatever reason, that knowledge is filtered into the mainstream. So when you see Marco Rubio or a respected and bright writer like Walter Kirn, that has influence. But it's not going to go over to the other side, the needle, to belief until people are going to have to present not just film that can be doctored or testimonia, but actual hard data. This is a alien corpse. He's here. Look at it biologically. Here's the it doesn't make, or this is an alien ship and these are the materials in it, and show the public at that point. And that hasn't happened. And then when you ask that data, everybody says, well, you can't do that. It's top secret. It's classified. Well, why is it classified? Yeah, you heard them saying
that in the trailer. Even the president only gets information on a need-to-know basis.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. The president can get anything he wants if he wants it. And I believe a lot of conspiracies. I was told right during COVID, I think it was in February, we had a brilliant neurobiologist, Stephen Quay, and I had him on my podcast. And he said, when everybody said it's a pangolin, it's a bat, he said, no, he had looked at the DNA. He was a very accomplished biogeneticist. He says this had about 7 out of 1 million chances for the cleavage site, everything. And then he said, Anthony Fauci is not being candid. Peter Daszak, who was at the height of his reputation and EcoHealth, they transferred some knowledge against the law to them. They rerouted it through EcoHealth. They had a $600,000 grant. And more importantly, they were green-lighting materials, instrumentation, and informal things to the Wuhan lab. And the Wuhan lab had denied, Wuhan, the city, had denied any travel anywhere in China at a time where you could travel to any European city or American cities when you were infected. And I was very skeptical at first, but everything he said was contrary to what our FDA, HHS, NIH was telling us, Fauci, and everything he said was absolutely true. It was all confirmed. So I'm, you know what I mean? It's not just that a theory
all
is
our
unpopular.
Conspiracy theories came true.
Yes, but what he did, and they didn't do with the UFO, he produced all of the genetic sequence, and he showed, and he brought data, and I had him on twice, and I know him very well now. And Stephen Quay is a brilliant, respected person, but more importantly, that's not enough. He presented data. He wrote a book. Roger Kimball and Counter published it. And same thing with Scott Atlas. He was ridiculed. He said, if you shut down the system, you're going to have more damage. then the COVID people that are young up till 18 will not suffer the same. And it was all based on data. And everybody ostracized him, and they were unfair to him. Everything he said was true.
They tried to ruin him. But wait, let me show you something. This got me thinking about this film. And I interviewed the stars of this film, and I highly recommend this film. In fact, Ben Shapiro does this thing. It's like Friends with Benefits or something like that. I can't remember what he calls it, but he asks people to make a recommendation for him to watch, and then he'll review it. And some of his friends pick absolutely terrible movies that just to torture poor Ben, and it's kind of a funny gig. But also some people offer like legit movies, and I chose the latter route when he asked me to do it. And this is the movie I recommended, and I recommend it to all of you. It's called 3 Identical Strangers. And it's on, you can get it on Amazon Prime, among others, right now. And I had on the stars of this documentary, my show, when I was at NBC. And it was one of the most memorable, incredible stories I've ever covered. We pulled a little bit from the trailer. I'm going somewhere with this. Here's a little bit of the trailer.
It was the first day of school. All these people are coming up to me saying, Eddie, how are you? Eddie, hi. I'm like, my name's not Eddie. I don't know what you're talking about. As soon as this guy turned around, I knew it was Eddie, his double. I said, you're not going to believe this. You have a twin brother. Oh, my God. As I reach out to knock on the door, it opens. And there I am. His eyes are my eyes, my eyes are his eyes, and it's true.
And then the story went from being amazing to incredible.
It was an article to Twins Reunited. I think I might be the third.
When people ask me what is the most remarkable story you ever encountered, I tell them it's the story of the triplets.
3 Identical Strangers. And this is a spoiler alert. And you really should turn down the volume for a second if you don't want to have the spoiler of this movie. But it's been out now for, almost 10 years. So I think I'm okay saying. But what is uncovered in this movie, in this documentary, it's true to life, is that in the 1960s, there was an experiment done on twins and triplets. And they had a mother who was pregnant with 3 baby boys. And she gave them to an adoption agency. She gave them up to an adoption agency. And this adoption agency worked with the government to study, forgive me, I think it was the government, pretty sure it was the government, but worked to study these sets of twins and triplets to figure out the nature versus nurture question. There was this scientist who was trying to figure out nature versus nurture. If we take these triplets and separate them and put them in very different families, very different, culturally, religiously, financially, will they wind up the same as each other? Will they have the same inherent sort of traits when they're age 30? Or will they be totally different because nurture is more important, right? And that was the experiment. And I'll let you watch the documentary to figure out what they concluded, because it's actually very interesting. But my point is, they were conducting experiments on babies without anybody's consent, without the consent of the birth parents. The birth parents didn't know, without the consent of the adopted parents, who were kept in the dark about the full nature of what was going on. They were misled too, as people actually came to their homes year after year to study the children without disclosing that they had a twin someplace or a triplet sibling someplace. It's a crazy ass story. So when I hear this guy say in 1960, they decided to experiment on babies in utero to see if they could possibly, can I discount that? Absolutely. I cannot.
No, I know that's true. I had a mother who grew up in the same house that I'm speaking to, and she was the 3rd generation. So they had no money, but she and her sister went to Stanford University, and then she went to Stanford Law School in the 1940s. It was kind of unusual. And they said that she was my mother's name was Davis, and they were Welsh, and she was very light-skinned, and that she had acne. So they said at Stanford University they had a new program. It was brand new, and it was going to have x-rays on young women's skin, face. And she went in for 50 treatments. And
50 x-rays?
yes, on her face and this was to, and then, 1980, she got a letter and said that we have examined this, and out of the X number of people, this many people got cancer. And she was healthy. She was the first, second woman appellate court judge in California, second woman to be a superior court judge in Fresno County. And sure enough, about 4 years later, she had a meningioma brain tumor, and they said, don't worry, it has nothing to do with that study. It's benign. And she died 2 years later, and it was malignant. And so if you had asked my family, my grandfather was always proud. He was very poor, but he had 3 daughters. And he said, I want them to be educated. Nobody in our family's ever gone to college. And at that time, Stanford was the college. So he sent his 2 girls. One of them was crippled with polio. She wasn't able to go. And they both got bachelor's and advanced degrees. And they were professional women. And they loved Stanford University. They thought anything about it was wonderful. But to be told when you were in your early 60s and you were just coming in, there were rumors she might be in the California Supreme Court, to be told that this process, she didn't even know what x-rays were. They just said it'll get rid of your acne. And then to be told that there were people in this study and she should be checked. And then I think it was not more than a year or 2 later, she got a brain tumor. And so,
oh, that's awful.
Your point is, did they do things like that? Yes. And did they tell people? No, they did not. And, I live on a farm. How can we rule it out?
Like, we can't look at this story from only a 2025 perspective and say, nah, they would never do that. They were doing crazy things. Yes.
And I can give you one more quickly. I grew up on this farm when I was told that paraquat was a toxic herbicide and to be very careful with it. But there was a new gyphosphate alternative called Roundup, and it was completely safe.
Boy.
It was not toxic because it was natural salts. So I had my kids, and their job was to get on a tractor and go around and spray weeds in the vineyard and the orchard on this big spray rig. And they were only like 12 and 14. They were really hardworking kids. And I would try to tell them, you better wear gloves, but they said, it's Roundup. Everybody uses Roundup. So if you got it on, I must have been bathed in Roundup myself. I put it on for 20 years. I got it all over myself. But they were young. And, and my daughter suddenly called me one day she was working at USC, and she said she was at her office and she couldn't see. And I drove down there, and she had an advanced form of leukemia and died in 48 hours. And,
oh, God, that's terrible.
And then I start reading that Roundup exposure, can cause lymphomas and blood cancers. I have no idea, but the point is, when it came out on the market, it was advertised as not a class 1 permit only herbicide. You can get it I still use it. You can get it at Home Depot. I have no idea if that had a connection, but my point is the way that it was advertised was that it was completely safe. And it wasn't, I don't think. I don't know if there's a connection. I don't want to make an unfounded allegation, although there's been lawsuits where people have won because they did demonstrate to a jury that it caused blood cancer. But you're absolutely right that governments and respected institutions, corporations say things at the time, and they don't just say them, they say unequivocally. As my dad said, I remember, why would you have x-rays? She goes, I didn't even know what they were. They just said it's a new treatment. And he said, and he was dating her, and he said, well, you were always sunburned. And she said, that was good. That was the treatment. They said the more sunburned you were, the better the acne would go away.
Wow.
And so and we know about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment where African-American men were given syphilis without their knowledge. So I think it's always wise to be skeptical of authority, of the establishment, of people in government, where they're not accountable, of people who have prestigious names or institutions that we all think we don't dare say anything about, Harvard, Yale, Stanford. And what I've seen of all these institutions, they're just people, and they're no better or no worse than anybody else. And often they're capable, if you give them an exemption that you can't criticize them or investigate, then they take the advantage of that. So I'm open to everything, just what you said. I have no doubt that they did that with twins. And I know from my own family here on a farm for 6 generations. And we went through the whole, from 1870 when they started until now, every iteration of chemicals. My grandfather would say, use nicotine powder, it won't hurt you at all, to kill leafhoppers. And then my mother said, well, they said arsenic is absolutely perfect as a herbicide. We all use arsenic. And DDT was the big thing when I was a kid. You know, it doesn't make you sick like anything else. And we had DD powder everywhere as a pesticide. So, and then parathion was absolutely, when I was growing up, parathion was deadly, but people used it all the time, and it was Zygon B. It was basically a derivative of what German chemical companies had used during the Holocaust.
Good gracious.
Not
to mention, what the farmers go through, and then what's going on the food that's going into the food supply.
And we went very organic very early, like 1980 at farmers markets, and people would come over and say, "You're crazy. There's no danger." But
you had the last laugh on that one. Well, that's what Robert Kennedy's trying to do right now.
That's why I'm very
HHS,
sympathetic. I think anybody that grew up on a farm in the 1950s and 60s and remember what people told you, they always had pest advisors that would come out. And even when I was farming full-time in the 80s, they would come out and say, I remember I got this pesticide all over my hand, the pump blew up, and it would turn orange from my elbow to my wrist, and I could taste it from the skin. It would taste like salmon. And I told the pest advisor, I won't name the name because it's not used anymore. And he said, oh, no, that's nothing. That is nothing. You don't need overalls. That's just too hot. You don't need to have a helmet or a breather. And I was sick for about 6 months from that. And,
oh my gosh. Well, thank God you switched to organic. I mean, that's how we've been living and eating in this country on our food supply, which is, I mean, for some weird reason, the left wants to attack Robert F. Kennedy for trying to get that stuff banned and out of our food supply. Thank God he's doing it. I got to run, but I'm so glad that we had this conversation. This is actually a very intellectually stimulating half an hour. Thank you for staying overtime. And I guess we'll watch this show and we'll have part 2 after we both do, Victor.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you, Megyn.
Wow. Amazing, right? I'm like, what do you think? Do you believe? Could it be? Or do you think this is all like made up stuff for people who've been misled or who are, I don't know, more conspiratorial and lean into these stories without enough proof? Let me know. The email is Megyn@MegynKelly.com. And go to MegynKelly.com now and sign up for our once a week, we call it the American News Minute. It's just an email from me with fun highlights from the show and always an update on my Strudwick and his naughtiness. We almost declared him a good dog recently, and then he said, not so fast. So we're back. In any event, you'll love it. We don't sell your emails. It's just between us. So go ahead and sign up there, and we'll keep the conversation going. We are back on Monday with after party host Emily Jasinski. In the meantime, enjoy this beautiful fall weather. I hope it's beautiful where you are. Enjoy this weekend either way.